Hopefully we have sound and we are recording. I think I figured things out. And we're going to look at Ozzy, his posture and neck use related to the hindquarters, and a couple of different strategies for working with Ozzy's rehab in the walk, in the trot, on different paths of travel with different speeds, right? So going to the right, he still wants to start off rolling me to the left like this. That's the right hip higher, which is a restriction of the right hind leg coming through, and the back muscles tightening on the right side because his barrel, his bones and his body weight are rolling left. So that's why I typically start on the right. And even on a very loose rein, the only thing I'm using the reins for is to help keep the neck alignment straight to my seat bones and keep the back level through the use of my body and body weight while we track sort of a smallish circle. As he slows down and I feel more levelness come through the back and I feel the hind legs a little more clearly under the saddle, then he lengthens the neck. He doesn't always lengthen the neck perfectly, right? That's still the stability coming and going through his back and hindquarter engagement, like we looked at with the groundworking video. So I'm trying not to influence the neck going up, down, in, or out. I'm just trying to influence it so that he doesn't excessively bend the neck left or right, especially if he gets distracted by something in the environment. And it's New Year's Day, so we still have some fireworks going off. Right? So as I play with the smaller circle and I feel the stability come under the saddle, I feel the hind legs starting to do their job more engaged, more resistance, more stability, right? The neck lengthens. So the reason Ozzy can't hold the long and low neck position consistently is because it's hard for him to place the hind legs closer to the center of the body and maintain the stability of a level back and pelvis with the hind legs closer. So just like working on the long reins, my aids, which are through my seat, legs, and reins, are helping stabilize the balance left to right, and the smaller circle is encouraging the hind legs to stay closer to the center of his body. Right? So I'm just going to repeat the small circle for a little bit. And even when he roots and he pulls, that's the beginning of him lengthening the top line muscles. It's just not consistent, it's not gentle, it's not pretty, because he still struggles with the stability and the engagement on the back half of his body, right? So he resorts to, and none of that am I causing with my rein use, right? It's going to happen whether he's in a bit or a halter, and by having a loose rein, I'm allowing him to play with his neck wherever he likes. If I have a consistent rein length, he's going to over curl the neck, he's going to drop the pole, and then become unable to make the changes through his back and hindquarter that he needs to make. He needs the freedom and the different uses of his neck while he's learning to stabilize the back and the hindquarter. If I disallow that with a consistent rein length or rein resistance, then I get him stuck. The short reins don't cause the lift of the back or the engagement. Reins can become part of our braking aid, but if the horse can't lift the back easily or doesn't have the muscular support to maintain hindquarter engagement, lifting the back, or stabilizing the back and hindquarter, then they're going to shift their energy left and right. They're going to create internal bending, they're going to roll or twist the spine, and so they can do all kinds of things instead of just lift the back. So when Ozzy lengthens the neck slowly, that's showing me he's developing more muscular control over the stability of his back and hindquarters. When he tosses his head like that, he lost the stability underneath me and behind me, and then adjusted his neck in order to stabilize from his front end, right? So this is difficult for him. When I can get a consistent posture of just long and low on this size circle, that will mean that he can hold a minimal amount of hindquarter engagement and stability, and that his back is no longer pushing down, but it's not lifting up very much. That's what gives you the posture of long and low. So the muscles of the top line lengthen because of the lateral stability of the spine and the pelvis, but then he falls forward, sometimes quick, sometimes slow, sometimes dramatically, sometimes gently, but he goes into long and low because he doesn't yet have enough hindquarter engagement or enough upward spinal flexion to control his own internal body weight from falling forward to the front legs. So long and low is not my balanced position, but for a horse like Ozzy, coming out of a long-term habit of dropping the back, disengaging the hindquarters, trying to stabilize through his hocks, which is what gave him hock arthritis, transitioning from a chronic posture in extension to even the chronic habit of long and low is just a step in the right direction for the function of his back, for using his muscles in a better way, that then he can improve the balance further. So what I find when I ride, it doesn't have to be a perfect circle, but it's harder to keep the internal straightness, but it's easier to help him stay engaged and stabilize the hindquarter. So that's why the warm-up on the small circle is pretty useful for him. I could do just this for another month or two, and he's only going to get better and better at using his hindquarters and back correctly and letting go of all this shortening muscle contraction that he does through the top line. I wanted to make sure he's going to be safe and reasonable for you to work with at the trot. So we've played with trot, we've improved the trot a little, but during the transitions is where he loses his balance the most, right? So if I were just to work with what Ozzy could give me authentically, you see, it still takes a while for him to adopt the long and low posture on my small circle compared to the up, down, up, down, up, down I start with, right? So I could stay on this small circle until I get at least 1 or 2 laps where he can hold the long and low posture. Now, today is a windy day, there's stuff going on, so the distractions perpetuate the imbalance, right? And it's harder for him to concentrate on this new use of his body. But there I get almost a full lap of him staying in long and low, right? So once he's in long and low for a greater percentage of time on my little circle, then I know he's warmed up. I could start spiraling out on my circle, make the circle a little bigger, which makes it easier for him to stay straight and level, but harder for him to engage and stabilize the hindquarters. So you're just sort of choosing what feels more important, right? And as I make the circle bigger and he doesn't have to engage as much, I get a little more consistency of the long and low in the walk on a bigger circle. So that's another option, something I can work with, spiraling in, spiraling out, to build up the engagement and stability of the hindquarters and improve it that way without ever asking for trot or canter. So now that I'm out on my bigger circle, which is where I found it's easier for him to improve the trot, then as soon as I give a leg aid, right? So he's staying consistently longer in the neck. Now, if I tap with the whip for him to push towards trot, as long as the neck stays long and somewhat low, I can keep pushing. There, where he shortens the neck, I could choose to quit pushing because he's resorting into dropping the back, disengaging the hindquarters, and stabilizing through his neck in that moment. So I could repeat what I would call a half transition or a half push. As soon as he's in long and low, I can move towards trot, move towards trot, move towards trot, move towards trot. I can keep asking for trot. There, he starts to shorten the neck. I might be able to get him back. Nope, I lost him. So I could take my legs off and let him slow down, right? Let him pick his speed of the walk on this bigger circle. There, he's back in long and low. So I can try pushing with my legs again until he drops the back. There, he drops the back. So you can see if I do it that way, I'm not going to get to trot anytime soon. As soon as he increases the speed of the walk, it doesn't take very much extra pushing power before he runs out of his ability or his strength or his knowledge to push more into the next gait, and he starts resorting into extension, which creates a pull forward into the trot. So that's why in the trot videos I've shown you, the transitions are pretty bad. He's either over curling his neck forward, dropping the pole, and he tends to speed up and go pretty fast in the trot when he does that. Or more recently, he started throwing his head up when he doesn't really want to go into the trot, telling me it's not easy for him to push into the trot, right? So whether the head and neck go up or he over curls and tucks his nose backwards, it's the same thing. He dropped his back a little bit, he tightened his top line, shortening the muscles, and lost the engagement and stability of his hindquarters. But with Ozzy, once he gets into the trot, he finds some pretty good steps during the trot. And while we're repeating 10,000 transitions up and down, in those moments of extension, I'm not too worried about it because he doesn't get stuck there. He doesn't stay in the posture of extension, even though he always adopts extension in the upward transition. Sometimes he finds the downward transition with his neck long, and sometimes he finds a nice smooth trot with a long neck while we're trotting, either just before he breaks or just before he speeds up. So those good strides of long and low during the trot tell me I don't have to worry too much about the transitions. They should get better as the trot gets better, as the posture is more habitually out of extension, out of a dropped back. So here, because he's long and low, I'm tapping with the whip. I have my legs on lightly, and I want to see, can we increase the speed maybe all the way into a trot transition? That was better. So he shortened his neck a little, right? He still can't push powerfully through the hindquarters to get into trot. But like you see, just by, even though my transitions in the videos have not been great, he has some really good moments in trot and the transitions are getting better. So this is another way I could play with trot. Wait till he falls into long and low, start pushing, right? He's either gonna trot, almost, he lost his hind legs. That one was a clear one. You could see the left hind leg drop out and he shortened his neck upward at the same time. That's the correlation I'm just pointing out, right? So I'm slowing everything down so that he can figure it out, but I'm not going to get as much time in the trot, and he might not get as good at finding his balance in the trot if I only worked through transitions. So you can pick either way. It doesn't matter, because eventually we want the same posture for him, the transitional posture of long and low, which is just slightly better than the upside down posture he's been worked in, right? So here, where he can keep the neck long, there, he shortened the neck. So in that moment, I have the option to take my time but keep requesting a trot, or take my legs off, let him slow down, stay at the walk. Wait, help him get straight, help him find his hind legs, wait for him to get back in the posture of long and low, which there he does, and then try another little bit of push, right? Yeah, so you can see I can get a few strides of trot in a better posture. He can't maintain it for very long. So what we've done in the past trot videos is part of him finding his balance in the trot and working towards canter under saddle is that he's going to have times where he easily goes forward, maintains the trot, but tends to get a little too fast and over curls his neck trying to lean on the bit. Then we have other days, more like this, where he's not so quick off my leg aid, he doesn't offer to maintain the trot, and he tries to go into kind of an upward neck use during extension in order to make the transition. So I can play with it and go, once the neck is long, even if the neck's not long, I can ask for trot, knowing the transition or the trot is not going to be super easy for him or me, but we're going to work on it in very small doses, right? If he starts to get stuck with his neck perpetually curling backwards or his neck perpetually sort of upward and short, then I need to change my strategy. It's no longer appropriate for me to keep working on trot if he can't at least give me some moments in this posture, right? Then I push, he immediately goes into extension because he's anticipating the difficulty that he feels during the trot. Am I still tracking? Okay, I think I'm tracking. So, of course, the trot is hard for him because his hindquarter muscles are not strong. His back is a little tight and not strong. It's improved drastically since he's been here, but it's still a work in progress. And that hock arthritis, he's working around it beautifully, but it's still, he has to relearn how to coordinate his balance. That's the posture change, right? The postural change is telling me when he's altering or improving the spinal functions. Not to be perfect, just to be better than his old habit, right? Every time we improve the posture to be better, we're healing up the use of all the legs. The pathology of the hock arthritis will never go away, but the functionality will improve as he rebuilds the coordination of his spine, the use of his hindquarters, all of that, right? Now we have another distraction. So I've lost my long and low, right? I can tighten up the circle a little bit. I'm using the reins alternately to keep the neck straight, especially if he wants to look over at the neighbors and bend his neck, right? Now I'm starting to get the long and low back. And you can see he's altered his speed of the walk a few times, faster, slower. That's exactly what he does in trot. A little faster, a little slower, the neck up, the neck over curled, the neck lengthening, a stride or two of long and low. All of that is changing all the time, right? And on a very loose rein, I'm trying to show you, I'm not causing the head tossing or the head position. I'm very lightly using my reins left to right to keep the neck in alignment with my seat bones as we track around a circle. That helps his internal straightness, right? There. Then I can ask, there, that much push, barely increasing the pushing, put him right back in the posture of extension, and he starts pushing on the bit, and you see the old stuff come back, right? So then I'm just going to take him a few laps on a smaller circle. Try to let him stabilize those hindquarters again, which that warm-up is what gave me the more consistent long and low when I first made the circle bigger to the right. Right? all of that sort of pushing and head tossing, that will go away as the back and hindquarter start to do their job. That's him trying to transition from stabilizing on the front end to suddenly that stability shifts farther back into the back and hindquarters, and the neck lengthens instantly, but not gracefully. And it changes quickly, which is telling you, even if we can't see it and we're not sure what we're feeling, it tells us the barrel, the back, the hindquarter is not quite engaged enough, stable enough, straight enough, or being used correctly to give him a consistently stable use of the neck. Right? So I'm just going to change direction. We're going to look a little bit at the left. And like I said, we can work on transitions, or if you can stay stable when his trot gets a little fast, or he's not so easy to get into the trot, when his head and neck position is changing a lot, when his back stability is coming and going, if you can stay stable, which is part of the reason I'm a little bit forward, keeping my seat weight light and putting more weight in my thighs than anything else. That helps me stabilize on a trot that's not so stable or easy to ride. Then I can post or not post, but it helps me maintain my stability even when his trot gets a little bouncy or he loses a leg like that and gets unstable. Right? So if he can't get into the posture of long and low on the bigger circle, I can come back, do a few smaller circles again. Right? He's pretty distracted. So the distraction is exactly part of the imbalance. Turns to the left have been a little more difficult for his balance compared to turns to the right, but that's improved. It's almost completely equal left to right now, but I hit a sticky spot once in a while, tracking left, where I have to use the left rein to get the turn a little more than I ever have to use a right rein to get the turn. Right? He may be more dramatic in his head tossing or his neck use because he's less stable tracking left compared to the right. Right? Now I'm starting to get a few strides of long and low before he completely loses it. And he veers out on the circle. So when I need that left rein for steering because he's not following my seat as well and can't keep a straight neck on the turn, then that also tells me he's less coordinated going this direction compared to the other direction, which means he drops his back a little more, he disengages his hindquarters a little more, he maybe doesn't reach through the front legs as easily, so he's fussier going to the left because he's struggling more, right? As this gets easier and easier for him, part of how I might choose to move on to the next challenge would be him maintaining the posture of long and low and the steering getting easier from my seat with very little use of the reins on this size circle. But you can see as soon as I made the circle a little bit tighter, and that can be him too changing the muscle use through the neck, upper back, and shoulder. As he gains stability on the back half, he's going to increase mobility on the front half. So all of that head tossing is just part of the deal, right? If you can't cope with it as a rider at trot or canter, and the canter would be pretty tough right now, then you can deal with the coordination change and the muscle use at the walk. It's the same whether it's walk, trot, or canter. It's just more force the faster the horse goes, and the changes in posture and use happen a lot faster as we increase speed. But they're not different. It's the same postural changes, the same relationship between the back end and the front end, whether it's walk, trot, or canter on any path of travel. So there he settled down a little bit more. I'm going to try taking him out on a bigger circle now that I can feel more stability under the saddle. I can feel the hind legs under me a tiny bit better. Not a lot better, just a little better, right? So then as I track out, sort of spiraling out onto a bigger circle, it should be easier for him to maintain a long and low posture on the bigger circle compared to the smaller circle. So I use the small circle to build up the engagement, the stability, the muscle use, and then I sort of see if he can hold it when I go out on the bigger circle, where I'm going to use transitions as an alternative way to build up the balance, stability, and use of the hindquarters. So that's what I want to see on my bigger circle, more consistently in long and low. And then from here, I can try trot, right? So if I want to really teach him how to push into trot rather than pull, I can work on transitions. As soon as I push with my legs or the whip, once he's in long and low, he's going to show me through his neck use how much he can push before he drops his back and loses his hindquarters, right there. So that's getting closer and closer to the trot transition, but it's not a trot transition. So the other direction, you saw the trot transitions are getting better. He's starting to lengthen his neck a bit more and a bit more going into trot, but he certainly can't hold the trot for more than a couple of strides like that. If I ask him to hold the trot and work on it in trot, he's going to resort into extension a lot more frequently. Doesn't mean I can't do it, doesn't mean it's going to ruin him. It's just a different strategy for training depending on how he's doing, what he needs to work on. There's my long and low, right? I can push and keep pushing, right there, long and low, push again. Right? When he curls the neck like that, when he starts to put a curl back in the neck, that means the same thing as tossing his head upward and pushing on the bit. It's just a different neck use reflecting the same problem. So whether he's over curling the neck downward or pulling the neck upward, both of those neck uses tell me, like there, he's already dropping his back and starting to pull into trot, rather than pushing through his hindquarters and back, because he lost stability, he lost coordination, or he just lost the muscular capacity to be able to do it, because he's still weak back there, right? So it doesn't matter. If I actually ask for trot, you're going to see him lose his balance in the transition. That's the only way he can do it right now. So his head is either going to go straight up and he's going to pull on the reins, or he's going to drop the pole, over curl the neck, and maybe go a bit fast in the trot. Let's see what we get, right? But if I keep my legs on, yeah, we're going to get the pushing, right? If I keep my legs on and I patiently pose the question, can you trot, right? That wasn't too bad, right? He sort of lengthened the neck. He gave me a few strides. Right? Once he starts to anticipate the trot, when I repeat the trot transition, he can get a little anxious. He can be a little more dramatic in his postural changes because it's hard for him. And that's what we saw also on the ground going into canter. Pushing into canter is quite hard for him. So he's much more dramatic in the transition. He trots 1,000,000 miles an hour, he throws his head up, sometimes he kicks out or he bucks or he jumps into the canter because he can't do it smoothly or correctly yet. Doesn't mean you can't ask for canter, just don't expect a good one. All right, I'm going to try the trot again. And again, just getting into the trot, right? When I first asked for trot, he either had a lot of resistance or a lot of anxiety. Now he's pretty good to just think, okay, I can work on the trot a little bit. right? Without getting too anxious, without getting too tense or pushing against me or pulling, right? So those transitions are getting much better. But if I want him to maintain that better use of his body, something closer to a long neck, not only through the transitions but during the trot, then I take the few strides he's giving me in this example or in this strategy, and then I have to walk again until he stabilizes, slows down, lengthens his neck, pays attention, concentrates, right? I can tighten the circle, widen the circle. Tighter circle might help him figure it out sooner, or leaving him on the bigger circle might be easier for him. I can just sort of play with spiraling in and out, right? So there's the neck curl with the dropped pole. This part of his neck gets lower than this part of his neck. That's a dropped pole. He doesn't over curl his neck as severely as he used to. That's sort of the last little vestiges of that habit that he's still working out. So when I push with my legs, there he actually lengthened, right? There he shortened upward and pulled. So dramatic, Ozzy. Right, so I took my legs off, I let him slow down. There he kind of over curled the neck, then he lengthened the neck. And I can't even say it out loud as fast as it's happening, right? So here, I'm just going to tighten the circle to get his attention, to get his hind legs more stable, to get the neck longer. All right, great. Then I can start pushing with my legs again. That's how he responded to a very light leg push. So when I closed my legs, he didn't even really increase the speed. He just tossed his head. He just lengthened his neck and pushed on the bit. That's fine. That's him telling me it's difficult, right? So I could continue to ask for the trot, but he's going to throw his head up in the air and never mind, right? So when he does this with his neck, it's because he's struggling from the saddle to the tail, and it's just reflecting that struggle. When he over curls his neck or drops the pole, it's the same struggle from the saddle to the tail, right? It's just a different neck use because he's searching for enough stability that he doesn't fall over, that he has some control over his body, but it's not good coordination. So there, I can push again. We can try a trot. If I keep pushing and get the trot, he's going to give me that, right? He's going to keep shortening the neck in the transition, but he might not hold the short neck if I do a few transitions in a row. Yeah, he gets more dramatic the more he struggles. That's not my hands. I don't want to be the one contributing to that, but I also don't need to control it. If I'm stable as a rider, if I kept that on a consistent rein length and a tight rein, all of that working out for his balance is going to happen invisibly underneath me or through the hindquarters. That's exactly what weakened the back and disengaged the hindquarters in the first place. So in order for him to change the use of the back and the hindquarter, I have to give him the freedom to do what he wants with his neck, right? There I push. I have a little bit shorter rein so I can be quicker left to right, but it's a loose rein. I'm not trying to hold his neck in or prevent him from tossing his neck or curling his neck or doing whatever he feels he needs to do. I'm using my legs, my body, and only the reins left to right to help him stabilize minimally. He's got to figure this out for himself in order to have self-carriage. So that's really what I wanted to show you. And I know there's not a lot of trot in this video, but I've shown you days. The last trot video where I didn't have sound, that was a trot day where he wanted to go faster and faster. He easily trotted off my legs. He maintained the trot for long periods of time, But if you look at that video, you'll see the poll is dropped, the neck is over curled backwards very frequently, right? Then the next trot video after that, where I did have sound, he kind of went the other way, more like today. He resisted going into trot and he threw his head up instead of curling it backwards. Means the same thing, right? But I repeated the trot transition until he started to kind of get the hang of it. So working through all this struggle and drama is just part of rehab. It's perfectly normal. If the horse were in pain, I would get an unsafe horse to ride. I would get a horse that would take really firm rein aids, or I would have to leverage that horse into a posture. This is just him struggling to learn a better coordination for his body, and one that his body was meant to adopt, but that doesn't mean he knows it, right? And with the hock arthritis, he has to organize his body to find balance despite the pathology, which is entirely possible. That's what heals the function of his hocks rather than making them worse. If I just frame him up and let him go around the way he's always gone around, the back will get worse, the hindquarter will get less stable, the hocks will get worse, and you would probably, with his x-rays, only have maybe a year, maybe 3, out of to have a sound horse. If you let him have the freedom of his neck, as dramatic as it is, as he adjusts the back and the hindquarters, he will figure out what is comfortable and stable and be able to coordinate in better balance despite the pathology in his hocks, right? And even that little bit of head tossing, that can be sometimes how horses start to loosen up the tight muscles. And the reason he struggles more going left than right is he's tighter through his back, his left front leg and shoulder, and the left side of his neck going left. That's why I get more resistance to the steering. That's why I get more dramatic head tossing when we track left. So just there, where he tossed his head 3 times quite dramatically, hopefully you could see I didn't do anything with the reins that caused that. That was him working something out in his body. I don't need to change that. I don't need to fix that. It's part of him discovering how to find a more mechanically comfortable and efficient coordination in the way the body was designed to function. And in the process of moving from a dysfunctional habit of use, which is the posture of extension, into a better, not ideal, but just a better posture of long and low, he's got a lot to work out muscularly, through his joints, through the use of his core muscles, his back muscles, his spine, his whole axial skeleton. So this process of it coming and going is what sort of makes people think they're either doing something wrong or that something's wrong with the horse. And nothing's really wrong. It's just an experiment. It's just exploration, right? So if I know how to support that and work with it, of course he's going to struggle to change his body from what he was doing. That's the whole point of rehab. And so struggle, when it's physical struggle, I think this was the very first video I ever did with Ozzy. Whoop, there goes the hind legs. That physical struggle is acceptable until he starts to have the energy of fear. So if he became more anxious or more tense, more resistant, like he's ready to blow up, that's no longer physical struggle, that's fear. But he's going to physically struggle even when he's dominant in the parasympathetic nervous system, when he's thinking, when he's paying attention, when he's relaxed, which is what makes him safe to ride through the process of rehab. But he's got a lot of physical struggle in order to change his habits of movement. You're going to see it. I wouldn't worry about it. right? You can see in the videos of his training time here that over time he's worked through some of the kind of more annoying or more dramatic habits that he's had. And he feels easy and safe to ride, walk and trot. He still poops a lot every ride. Right? But in your trot transitions, as you work on trot, you can work on it as many or as few strides as you can handle as a rider, right? There's even been times with Ozzy where I feel stable, but his anxiety level is coming up, and that tells me, okay, back off, let him walk a bit more, let him think, let him chill out, maybe go back to my little circle where he finds more stability and more hindquarter engagement, and just let him adjust. Let him have some thinking time, let him explore without too much pressure on him before I go and challenge him with the next change, the next speed, the next direction, the next size circle. Right? So this is my last video of Ozzy. He ships out on Friday. I don't think I'm going to get another one. And so hopefully that helps you with continuing the training and getting the changes that we're looking for in a way that doesn't mean you have to do it the same way I did it. You can go slow. You can play with the walk longer. You can take more time with the transitions. You don't have to repeat the transitions until he's good at trot like I worked on. The canter, I think he still shows enough anxiety going into canter in the groundwork that I don't feel it's comfortable enough for Ozzy that it would be safe for you to try as a rider. And even if you could stay safe and do it, it's still a bit more extreme in his postural change going into canter. So he may as well just work on it more walk and trot, because wherever he can stay focused and calm while he's struggling is where I'm going to get the improvements in his coordination, which is what builds all the right muscles for the power and control at the faster speeds. So it doesn't matter. So I hope that helps. I hope you guys have enjoyed Ozzy as a case study. I wish I had him longer, but he's got to go home to his mama. So this is what we got done in the time we had with the horse we had, trying different strategies, making different improvements.